Namaste everybody, the day has come for us to make our loaded ramen, and I don't know about you, but I'm very excited. I have all my ingredients together. I have them all chopped up, so I highly recommend having everything ready in the appropriate bowls. Look, if you haven't chopped anything up yet, that's perfectly fine. The first thing we're going to do anyway is make the broth, and as the broth is simmering, you'll be able to chop all this stuff up because you won't really need we won't really need it until the broth is on. So I just wanted to show you to get everything set up. It's going to make things much easier in the future. So I'm going to bring these over. This is our spring onion, garlic, ginger, and our green beans. Now I'm a bit sneaky. I had some lemongrass left over, so I'm going to use some lemongrass. You don't have to use lemongrass. I'm just going to sneak it in. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to bring our quite a decent sized pot. This might be a little bit of overkill, but the reason why I got a big pot is to allow for a lot of liquid. It's going to be reducing down over a long period of time, so don't feel like you have to get the biggest pot you have in your kitchen. Something that's going to hold roughly 1.5 liters of water would be perfectly fine. So we'll put our oil in the pot first. Now I'm going to use coconut oil for the stock base just because it's got a really nice, it's a thick kind of oil. The creaminess of the oil will permeate out throughout the dish. So that's just enough in there to coat the bottom of the pan. And we're just going to be frying up all the different spices. So we're just going to let that melt. Coconut oil doesn't take very long to melt, even when it's solid. So I'll put that there. So we've got that on probably a medium to high heat. And it'll be reduced right down until we're ready to cook. Okay, so first things first. So I'll just show you something. With the garlic and the ginger, I haven't cut them up very fine at all. I've only cut them into little knobs. And the reason is they're going to flavor the stock over a period of time. And when we go to fry up the mushrooms and the protein, we're going to retrieve these out of the stock and we're going to put them in with the mushroom and the protein. So the garlic and the ginger flavor will be permeated out throughout the entire dish, in both the stock and in the things we're going to fry. But for now, I'm just going to go straight in the pot, just like that. We'll get our trusty stirring spoon. Sorry if I'm getting in the way. Just like that. Alright, sorry, the pot's taking a little longer than I thought to heat up. But you can already smell the garlic, you can smell the spring onion, the ginger. It's good stuff. Now, we'll stick in our cinnamon stick. So everything can go in the pot before we put the water in, because it's just going to roast the spices slightly. It's going to create a really, really nice, well, I guess it's going to bring out the oils, it's going to bring out the aroma. So that's coriander seed. We're going to put in our star anise. Star anise is quite a strong flavour. If you really, really like that sort of aniseed taste, you can put in more. I'm just going to put in 3 for now. Got a teaspoon of cumin seed. Now, again, clove is a very, very strong spice. Now I've got here 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's going to be more than enough. So that goes in. And we're just going to give that a bit of a stir around. Now, we're not really looking for any browning or anything like that. We're just incorporating those flavors into the oil, and we just want to toast the spices just a little bit, just to get things kicked off. Now, don't worry about seasoning any of this yet, because we have a lot of seasoning in things like the miso paste, in things like the soy sauce and the brown sugar we're going to be using. So we got a lot of stuff going in there. Alright, so that's kind of, you can judge this by smell. The smell's starting to get a lot more intense. And you can even see a little bit, the onion's starting to go a little opaque. So that's looking pretty good. Alright. So they're just gently frying away very, very nicely. So from here, we're going to add our water. Sorry, it's going to sizzle a little bit. Smoke a little bit, I mean. So I'm putting in, this is just probably under, or just over, sorry, 1.5 litres. So now we've got the liquid in the pot. We can add things like our miso paste, our soy sauce, and our brown sugar. So I always like to do the miso paste first because the miso paste can take a little while to disintegrate. So 2 tablespoons. This is quite a huge tablespoon, so you don't need to use it like this much. Alright, that's pretty good. Give it a bit of a stir around to just help it disperse throughout the meal. Now we're going to keep this on the medium to high heat, because we want it to come to a bit of a boil. Alright, stir that miso paste in. If you do happen to catch a bit, you can also help it sort of disperse it just by kind of, you know, rubbing it on the side and just sort of helping it break up. Okay, we're going to add our soy sauce. So, as you know, I don't usually measure, but I said about 3 to 4 tablespoons, I believe, which would be about that. And the trick is you look at the color. So the color's changed to a kind of a nice sort of, bit of a darker color. That's all you want. That's the soy sauce is not only going to add that nice savory taste, but it's going to color the meal quite nicely. And then all we need to do is just 1 teaspoon brown sugar, just like that. And at this point, we want to also add our stock cubes. So these are beef flavored. I think these are vegan. Vegan beef flavored. Marcel is the brand that I kind of go for because it's definitely vegan and the flavors are really, really nice. I think for ramen, the beef flavored has a bit more of a overtly savory taste to it. It's a lot more, not quite as subtle as like your chicken or your veggie stock cubes. So I'm just breaking them up a little bit. Straight into the pot. And we'll give that a bit of a stir around. Awesome. I don't know if you can see it there on camera, but there's like little flecks of oil that float to the top from the coconut oil. And it just gives the dish a nice shine as well, which is quite nice. Make that sure it's on the heat. All right, cool. So, just finishing off some things to finish off. This is where you would add your green beans, but of course I'm going to also add the lemongrass. And this is just going to sit in the broth and just flavor it as it reduces. Good stuff. Awesome. So all the coriander seeds, the star anise, the cloves, the garlic, the ginger is going to stay in here for the next hour. And we're going to reduce this by at least half, or no more than half, I should say. And if you find it's reducing too quickly, what you can do is just add more water. All the flavors in there are going to intensify to a humongous amount over the next hour. So this is when you could turn it down to a medium heat and just let it simmer slowly, and just every, say, 15 minutes, just check on it, make sure it's hasn't reduced too much. I'm going to keep the lid off, just because then it gets rid of the moisture a lot quicker, and the flavors will definitely infuse with the lid off as well. So that's it for that for now. And feel free to pause the video here. And all we're going to do is you're just going to let that sit. We have our protein obviously in our cabbage, our noodles, and our mushrooms. When the time comes, we're going to, with about 10 minutes away from this being ready, we're going to fry up our mushrooms and our protein and get our noodles ready. So until then, feel free to, well, if you haven't chopped up any of your veggies, now's the time. You've got plenty of time, and I'll see you very, very soon. Hi everybody, I just wanted to show a quick reminder of what I've got here. As I said in the earlier video, this was salted seaweed. So this wasn't dried, it was actually fresh, but because it was covered in salt, I just wanted to soak it so all the salt can seep out of it, and later on we're going to drain that, give it a wash, and then cut it up and put it in our broth. I have the mushrooms here. These are just sliced kind of, you know, pretty roughly. So I've got a mixture of portobello and king oyster. So the mushrooms along with the mock duck and the tofu are going to be fried in a pan separately. But your black fungus and your puff tofu, they will be put straight into the broth without any frying first. Because all they do is just absorb the flavors of the broth, and they don't require any actual frying. I also just kept, this is the cabbage, just a roughly cut. That's going to be fried up as well, very, very lightly in the pan. And I've kept the green parts of the shallots, of the spring onion. Just going to use as a garnish later. So that's all. And yeah, our broth is reducing nicely, and I guess we'll see you when we're ready to start frying. All right, good luck. Okay, so we are back, and if you want to take a look at this broth here, it's reduced by almost half. I did actually have to add a bit of water, maybe 2 cups went back into this, just to bring it up to a nice level. So from here, I'm going to just use this handy little strainer, handheld strainer, to take out things like the coriander seeds, the star anise. I mean, you're going to have a lot of trouble getting the coriander seeds, but take out as many as your patience allows. So we're also going to take out the lemongrass. Just make sure you don't lose much of that broth. There we go. So you feel free to pause the video now if you want, and because I'll be here for the next maybe couple of minutes. So you just want to make sure you get as much of, like I said, the coriander seeds as you can. It's going to be quite difficult because they're quite small, and they're going to be, you know, strewn throughout the entire broth. But you want to get them out, otherwise you might get a bit of a big chunk of coriander seed, and it's sometimes it's not pleasant. Unless you really, really like coriander seed, then don't worry about it. So we'll be back in a sec with hopefully a much clearer looking broth. So after about 5 or 6 minutes, I kind of gave up trying to get every single coriander seed I possibly could, but that's okay. So this is kind of what the bowl has, what I've skimmed out. So we have some star anise there, some coriander seeds, some lemongrass, big cinnamon stick, and if you really want to be pedantic about it, you can keep going, getting out all the coriander seeds. But in a separate bowl, I just want to put my garlic and my ginger, bits of ginger, so that I can chop that up and fry the mushrooms and fry the protein in it. So nothing gets super wasted in here. If you do get a little bit of broth coming out with what you're scooping out, then don't panic. You can always add a bit more water if you've really scooped out a lot. But you shouldn't have any problem. If you don't have one of these handy little scoops, there's not much of an alternative, I guess. If you have a fine strainer, you can just draw the strainer through and just scoop out, put the things that you want back in the broth, just with some tongs or something. But this thing has proved itself useful time and time again. I just got this from a cheap store. It was about $2. And this is what you'd use for when you deep fry. You kind of scoop things out and you drain the oil and then you put that onto your paper towel. But if you have a soup base like this that you need to skim things out of, then it's really quite handy. All right, I think I got all the ginger and garlic there. Cool. Oh, there's one. So be thorough, because you may find if you've left a clove in there or if you've left a big chunk of star anise, that it's going to be an unpleasant experience when you finally bite into it. I just completely lost that. There it is. So, get that in there. That's right. I'll put the beans back in a sec. All right. I think that's good. So we're going to let that continue to heat and cook down. So we're going to bring the ginger and garlic over to cut it up. I'll see you in a sec. Okay, so I've got my ginger and garlic here. I'm just going to bring it out on a cutting board. And I'm just going to really quite roughly chop this up. So it might be a little hot. So we're just going to... It doesn't have to be super thin. You'll probably find it's going to be super easy to cut up, especially the garlic, because this is going to be nice and mushy, which is awesome. So once you just sort of cut through, just like that, and a little bit of a rough chop through. Always use a nice sharp knife. No blunt knives allowed in the kitchen. Alright, so I'm going to keep this here, and to the broth, actually before I add to the broth, I'm going to just strain this seaweed. Now if you bought just dried seaweed, you don't necessarily have to soak it, because you can just literally put it straight in the broth and it'll absorb the broth essentially, and it'll expand. So this stuff didn't get any bigger, but we just soaked it so otherwise it'd be super duper salty. I'm just going to give it a bit of a quick rinse. And we're going to give it a bit of a rough chop as well. Actually, no, we're not. We're just going to take it over. We can literally just tear out strips. Oh, wow, that's really quite leathery. All right, change of plan again. We're going to cut it up. I was not expecting that seaweed to be that tough. So just some strips like this. Easy peasy. It's really up to you. You can have really nice thin bits of seaweed. But this is just going to add a nice seafoody sort of taste without having to put any actual seafood in there. If you get the dried stuff, it's much easier to work with. And that's just going to add a huge nutrient boost. All the minerals you get out of the sea, magnesium, and so forth. Potassium, iodine, really good source of iodine, seaweed. Alright, we'll put this straight into the broth. Awesome. Another little stir. There it is. And that should also absorb some of the flavors from the broth anyway. So you get a nice bit of a chewy seaweed taste and texture. And we're also going to add some more stuff to the broth. So this is where we put in our puffed tofu. Now I'm only going to use maybe half this packet because there's already so much more going into it. Alright, so bring it back over to the stove. Why not take this with us? So these will just, as the name suggests, puff right up. You don't need to fry them. I think they're actually pre-cooked technically, but all they're really for is to add a nice bit of a, if you've ever had puffed tofu before, it's nice and spongy. Just little sacks of flavor they turn into. So super good stuff. And that's all you really are going to need. And to that, we're also going to add the black fungus. Same thing, these will expand They'll probably double in size. So you don't actually need to add as much as you think. They'll soak up the liquid. All right. So you'll start seeing the liquid will start looking quite turbid and quite murky. That's just because it's concentrated down. So all those flavors from the cinnamon, the star anise, the clove, the miso, the soy sauce is all concentrating. So it's going to be a pretty darn tasty dish. I'm going to add a bit more water to that because I think the water level is a bit too low, and those will soak up more fluid. So we're going to add it to about there. And over the next 10 minutes or so, they are going to soak up more fluid. And yeah, so you just want to give it a stir every couple of minutes. But until then, that'll give us time to do some frying. So I'll get all my stuff together, then we'll start frying. Okay, so I'm ready to start frying. The broth is still simmering away. And I've got the jug on because I'm going to be boiling the noodles very, very soon. But until then, I've got my pan, which is going to be getting very hot very soon. And I'm going to start frying my tofu. So the idea is I'm going to fry my protein first, and then take the protein out, and then put in the mushrooms and the cabbage. So I'm going to put this in there. I'm going to separate the two in the pan just to make it a bit easier to work with. So this is the mock duck. And the mock duck, you just cut into strips like that, and it'll fry quite nicely. If you don't have enough room in the pan, if you don't have enough room in the pan, just don't overcrowd the pan too much. So this should start browning up once the pan gets nice and hot. You just want to coat it in the oil. Now we're not going to do any seasoning with this stuff because at the end we're going to be putting in some keycap manis, and that's going to give all the flavor we need for the tofu and the mock meat, the mock duck. So we're just looking to brown one side of the tofu first quite well. So as you can see, it's already starting to change color. And the mock duck should get actually quite crispy. I probably should have waited a little bit longer to put the duck in after the tofu, because the tofu actually takes a bit longer to cook. But that's okay. Once this is finished, you can take it out of the pan. So it's doing well. Every now and again, check the tofu. It's already starting to get a little bit of colour. I don't know if you can see that. See, it's getting a little bit of browning. So I'll put that over. Watch your hands. Yep. Cool. Alright. If the side of the tofu that you flip over hasn't browned yet, just keep it down. Alright, sweet. This pan's getting even hotter. I don't know if you remember from my last few posts, but this particular part of the stove is volcanic hot, which is handy for, flash frying things. Oh, I'll show you this. If you look at the tofu now, the puff tofu, it's probably doubled in size. So that's pretty cool. Alright. So as these cook, so that's starting to get quite a bit of brown on it. So I should mention this mock duck is wheat based. It's made from wheat gluten. So if you are celiac, definitely don't use that as an option. I'll stick just with your soy-based and wheat-free products for protein. Alright, I think that's... yeah. Okay, so what I'm going to do is check the other side of the tofu. Whoops. Right. Smarter idea would be to use tongs. If you have a pair of tongs handy, definitely use those instead. Much easier. There we go, look at that. Alright, so they're browning up quite nicely. Might just brown them up more on the side they were on originally. Okay, that's looking nice. Oops. The tongs are supposed to be easier. Alright. Cool. So we're getting somewhere. I'm going to start taking out the duck. Actually, I'll take out certain parts of the duck because they're starting to cook quite well. We will be throwing all this back in momentarily. Alright. I don't know if you can see that on the camera. There's like a bit of a texture happening, and it kind of looks like it's taking on that kind of golden, crispy skin sort of look. That's kind of what you're looking for. I think there are certain buzzwords in cooking, like crispy and, creamy and all that sort of stuff that just, even just hearing the words makes you excited about eating. Alright, I'm going to start taking some of this tofu out. Just check the sides. If they're nicely browned, then they're ready to be taken out. Because we just want to cook the tofu a little bit before we marinate it. So I'm going to put in the rest of the duck. Okay, so I'm going to just cook this until it's all browned, and I'll come back when it's all ready to be marinated. So I'll see you in about 2 minutes. Alright, so this is all cooked now. The duck's looking kind of nice and brown. Tofu's got a nice browning to it. We're going to chuck it all back in the pan. And we're going to toss it around a bit. And we're going to put some keycat manis in. I think I put some measurements in the ingredients list, but really you just want it to coat enough of everything so that it gets a nice colour. We're going to turn off the heat for now. And we're just going to, flick it around. You can just use a spoon. And it's just going to coat everything, give it that really nice colour. The sweetness from the keycat manis is going to mix with the savouriness. Just like that. And that's all you really need to do is just coat it. And that'll actually crisp up a little bit more even. So that smells pretty good. Alright, now that's looking good. I'm going to put that back on the plate. I'm going to turn the heat back on. I'm going to put a little bit more oil in. And we're going to fry our mushrooms. There we go, that's plenty of oil. So we have our bowl of mushrooms ready. These are going to cook very, very quickly, so... And these will take on a little bit of colour from the keycat manis as well. We add our ginger and our garlic. Just like that. Alright. Stir it all around. Coat it all in the oil and the garlic. So this is going to take maybe 3 to 4 minutes to just cook down. So I'll see you all in about 3 minutes time when these should reduce in size by about half. So see you very soon. Alright, so our mushrooms have reduced in size. They're looking nice and brown. We're just going to add our cabbage. Now the cabbage we don't want to cook that much. We're just literally going to add some heat to it. Oops. Oops. If you're messy like me, then just use a spoon to stir. Any more than 2 whoopses and there's... you gotta stop what you're doing. Find a different alternative. So the heat's off. I'm just gonna stir that around a little bit. In the meantime, With the spare stovetop we have, I'm going to turn that on to a high heat. And that's going to be where we're going to cook our ramen noodles. And from there, once that's ready, we'll have all our components of the dish. The noodles will be there, and we can put it all together, and it's going to be amazing. So I'll see you all in about, well, say 2 minutes. Alright, so we've got our pot, which we're going to put our ramen noodles in. I'm just going to fill it with water. So you want it to be a pretty good amount of water. If you overshoot it, that's fine, because you just want to have enough water in there to cook the ramen noodles thoroughly. Alright, we are almost there. So I've just reduced that down to actually I'm going to turn that off because that's pretty much done. We've got our cabbage and our mushrooms just there ready. We have our protein and we have a bit of a garnish at the end. But for now, we're just going to cook the noodles. So again, this is just a dried variety of ramen. If you have fresh, actually good thing to mention, if you do have fresh ramen noodles, this will literally take 20 to 30 seconds for it to cook. Whereas if you are using dry, it will take a little bit longer, maybe 3 to 4 minutes. But for most noodles, they've got these little convenient parts. That's about 1 serving right there. So I've got 3 parts in there for 3 people. You can always come back and cook more noodles if you have a lot more of the broth left, or if you have a lot more of the mushrooms left. So exciting stuff. So they're already breaking apart. A good ramen noodle, you need to have a good chew to it. So you don't want to overcook these. You just want to separate them a little bit. I haven't salted the water, so these don't really require salting because you're going to have a really thick and delicious broth going over it anyway. Alright. That's not too steamy for the camera there, cameraman. Alright. So these are just going to do their thing. And you want to always test. Never assume that they're okay. You want to always test. Alright, so that's a little bit crunchy. Alright. So it should have a fair bit of chew. If you're familiar with al dente, this is going to be a little bit more than al dente. It's going to be quite a thick consistency. So I'll see you in about 2 minutes. Okay, so the noodles are nice and cooked. I can't tell you, you can't taste it through the video, but it's quite chewy. It's still got a fair bit of texture to it. So we're going to just turn that off and we're going to serve it up. So the way this works is we do our noodles first. Just let it drain just a little bit. Doesn't matter if there's a bit of water in there. Yeah. All right. And then from here, we add our broth, which we're going to just ladle in, making sure we get those puffed tofu, the seaweed, really just filling that bowl. Look at that goodness. I've got a few people around me who are salivating, so I hope everyone at home is as well. All right, and then we can add our mushrooms and our protein. You can be as neat as you want, sectioning it out. Then our protein, a couple of slices of tofu in there. Some of the duck. Look at that, that's good stuff. Oops. And then we're just going to have a bit of a garnish. Just the green parts of the spring onion. Alright. And that is a humongous bowl of high protein, high nutrient, warming and delicious ramen. So please, if you've stuck with me through this recipe and you haven't been scared off by it, please send through a picture of your own ramen recipe at home. I'd love to check it out. If you have any questions or comments or suggestions, I'm very open. And enjoy, my dear friends. Namaste.